Why do my clothes shrink? And how do I prevent my clothes from shrinking? Those are the two questions we will be exploring in this video. There are three primary reasons why your clothes shrink. Number one is heat. We all know that if we dry our clothes in the dryer, we run the risk of them shrinking. That's because when you expose fabrics to heat, the fibers tighten and constrict, and this will cause them to shrink. So if you've ever put on a pair of tight jeans or tight pants before, you wear them for a few hours, maybe do you a couple squats, and you'll notice after a couple hours, you got a little bit of wiggle room, right? They're a little bit looser. They're not tight like they once were when you first put them on. But if you take that same pair of pants or jeans or whatever they are, throw them in the dryer for an hour to an hour and a half, and then try to put them back on, you'll notice that those jeans are tight and snug again. That's what the heat does. It causes them to tighten and constrict. Unfortunately, sometimes they overcompensate themselves and they tighten and constrict a little too much, and then you've got a shrunken pair of pants. Now, to what extent this happens will depend on the fabric type, because different types of fabrics are more sensitive than others to heat. Natural fibers like cotton, wool, silk, they're far more prone to shrinkage than synthetic man-made fibers like polyester and nylon. The natural fibers are way more heat sensitive. The second reason your clothes shrink is moisture, and I've got a visual aid for this one. Okay, we're going to jump into this. So natural fibers are very water absorbent. They suck up water like a sponge. So when you get natural fabrics wet, when you put a natural fabric garment or whatever in the washing machine, the fibers swell. They expand like this. See my cheeks? They expand, they swell. The fibers in natural fabrics swell when they get wet because they absorb that water. This is because the water molecules infiltrate in between the fibers and they fill in the gaps so that the fibers get pushed apart from each other. They expand, they spread, and they're pushed apart from one another. They become plump, they become elongated, if you will. Let me show you what I mean. Let's start right here. See these two little lines right here? 1, 2, these two little lines. Pretend these are two fibers. This is a fiber right here, and this is a fiber. Okay? And there's space, there's a little white space in between them. Now look at the fibers. You got your fiber here, and you got your fiber right here. And all this squiggly stuff in the middle, water. You got your fabric wet. And now the water has filled that space, and what happened? It pushed the fibers apart and separated them from one another. So now the fabric is plump, it's elongated, it's fluffy. Well look, the fabric's going to dry. You're going to put it in the dryer, you're going to hang it dry, whatever. It's not going to stay wet. The water is going to evaporate. And when it does, when this water evaporates from that white space in between the fabrics, when the water molecules that were previously filling this white space evaporate, this happens in natural fibers. They contract back to its original state, but when they contract back, they're closer together. See, here they were this far apart, and over here, now that the water has evaporated or the garment has dried, they contracted back, but they contracted back even closer together, which means you have shrinkage. It shrunk. This is, there's millions of these in a fabric, millions of these little fibers. So, that happens to a few 100,000 of them, your garment's going to shrink. So the process of expanding when wet and shrinking back when it's dry, that causes shrinkage. Well, natural fibers are very prone to that. And so that's one of the primary reasons why polyester and nylon, which are man-made fabrics, they're synthetic, they're not nearly as water absorbent. They're not nearly as prone to shrink, is because when they made those, they had this in mind. They wanted to make a fabric that wasn't going to be nearly as water absorbent, so you wouldn't have that expanding and contracting action going on. The third reason your clothes shrink, and that's going to be this bottom part here, is due to agitation. Now I want to go back to when the fabric is in its swollen state. When the fibers are in their swollen state, the fibers are more vulnerable to get moved around and become deformed and mispositioned. When your machine is agitating the garment and it's getting beat around, it's getting pulled and twisted and maybe compressed by other items, it's getting tossed to and fro, it disrupts the alignment of the fibers. Look at them. This fiber's pointing down a little bit, this fiber's going up a little bit, it's expanded, and it's disproportioned, and it's deformed. The fibers are deformed. So when the water molecules evaporate and the fibers contract back to their original state, the clothing can appear to be smaller because the original structure got disrupted. And now it gives the perception that your garment has shrunk. This is another reason why they made man-made fabrics like polyester that are not nearly as water absorbent, is to avoid all this nonsense. So how do you prevent this from happening? How do you prevent your clothes from shrinking? That's why you have dry cleaning. Some garments you just can't get wet. But honestly, the best thing you can do is just to check your care labels, right? You get a garment, they always have tags and care labels on them. Check those care labels and just wash them and dry them and whatever you need to do to them as recommended by your care tag. Some items you need to use lower heating settings. Some items have to be hand washed. Some items you can only wash in delicate cycle. If you read your care labels, you'll be good to go. So that's it. That's all I got for you. That's why your clothes shrink. I hope you found the video valuable. Thanks so much for watching. If you've ever wanted to know the difference between rubbing alcohol and isopropyl alcohol, click right here.